introduce you to our keynote speaker, who came all the way from Miami to be here today with us. He's the head of TestingUy, and he's been working with AI long before AI was popular. So please welcome Tariq King.
No? Yeah? Okay, awesome. I probably need the clicker, no? That would be a useful function. All right, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Gracias por invitarme. It's been interesting already, just being here. And I think I've been quietly waiting for this season that I'm in right now. Because it's very noisy. This is a very noisy season for all of us. Like, you're bombarded with artificial intelligence updates like every minute. And everyone is pushing the AI agenda. And I started something a few months ago, and I've been hoping that the testing community would start to catch on, especially some of the ones that are out there talking about how AI basically sucks and it can't do this and it can't do that. And we're missing a big opportunity. So today we're going to talk about the future of testing. This is the theme of the conference. But it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable for me because I have to do something that I don't like doing, which is actually have to talk about myself. I'm not very good at doing that. But it's important. And hope that we can kind of usher ourselves into a future of something different. So the title of the keynote is Human Experience Testing. And I think you'll get it quite quickly once we start going through it. And hopefully you'll see that all of the buzz, all of the talk about AI leads us down a few paths, right? And that you all need to figure out as we move forward. So, yeah, we are hearing about AI taking over, right? So how many of you, by a show of hands, have heard these things in the last few months, right? Number one, AI is going to take over testing. Show of hands, all right? Testers just need to learn prompt engineering. We actually have a workshop on prompt engineering, right? I'll teach you about prompt engineering, but that's not the only thing you should learn. We no longer need manual testers. This one has been going on for a long time. If you haven't heard this, then you've been under a rock for too long. And then agents are the future of software testing and test automation. So we hear these things, and I want to start by just disclaiming and letting you know this is not an anti-AI presentation. And that might sound weird coming from me because I'm known a lot for my work in AI, specifically intersecting with testing. But there's some things that I'm going to say that are going to be a little bit different from what you're accustomed hearing. And I started, as Janaina mentioned, I started in AI a long time ago. And I actually have a career that spans across academia, through industry, across small companies, through large organizations, and across the software testing and software engineering discipline into AI. And half of the things I've done, you might not really even know, because I don't like to talk about it, because I believe that being humble is important. But I have to start this by letting you know, like, who am I to talk about the future of testing, especially when it comes to AI? So I'm the head of TestingUy, but I started in testing back at Florida International University, actually from before that, Florida Tech. But I really kind of stepped into what I would call the future of testing while I was doing my PhD at Florida International University in Miami. And in 2009, I had quite a bit of work done in the area of what is called autonomic self-testing. And this was back in a time where, back in 2003, I think Microsoft and IBM and all these guys were talking about the future of computing being adaptive computing, right? Self-healing and self-learning, right? This kind of autonomous thing. IBM coined, their whole thing, autonomic computing. And it was interesting because there was all this stuff about these different capabilities, right? But what I realized was that no one was talking about something that would be very, very important. Like they wanted to enable these self-star characteristics and use these autonomous managers to do that, but not recognizing that the only way that we can do all this self-healing and self-configuration is if we have self-testing as an inherent part of the system. And so that's what I chose to do my dissertation on, a self-testing approach to autonomic software. And so I decided, like, hey, I think that what we need to do, yes, it's great to have these autonomous agents, but let's also have testing agents that also go into the software and validate these changes. Because if we make changes to software today, normally we run a whole bunch of testing before we ship it. But these systems could change dynamically at runtime. So therefore, testing needed to be something that happened at runtime, right? So I did that, and you'll hear all of these companies talking about how they invented autonomous testing, right? And I smile at that because I point them back to my dissertation, which was published in 2009. Most of these companies started their stuff in 2014 or so. So I have an approach that we use today to run all of these startup companies. And why is that important? Well, I think typically I'm always like a little bit of a forward thinker. I like to think ahead of myself. And in 2015, I was at Ultimate Software, which is the HR and payroll company based in Weston, Florida. Now you might know them as UKG after a bunch of mergers. And that's where I started my testing career after academia. So I became a professor for a few years, and then I moved into Ultimate Software as an architect. And it was pretty important because at one point in 2015, my boss came to me and said, hey, what do you think is the future of testing? Like, what's that going to be? I was doing testing in industry. And I said, well, I think in the future, the machines are going to learn how to test themselves, right? What else did I know, right? 2009, I wrote a dissertation. And he said, okay, great. Our CTO is going to give you a blank check. You need to go and start a team and do a moonshot project on how we can use AI and machine learning to do software testing. I was like, what? And of course, we needed a name, so we called it Pterodactyl. Why not call it, an ancient dinosaur name for a new modern testing tool, right? So we did this moonshot project, Pterodactyl, which used to take these autonomous agents and crawl the application, build a model, and start exploring, right? And measure state transition coverage and start finding issues. And then you could extend it to use things like accessibility tools to find different types of issues. It could analyze user stories and coalesce those results and give you meaningful coverage. This was back in 2015 when we embarked on this. And so there was a bunch of patents that came out of that work. A big patent on a system that can autonomously test another computer system, and then a number of sub-patents. So when I talk about inventing autonomous testing, even if I take my dissertation as an academic exercise, if we step into industry, you'll see like I've also looked at this in depth. And so one of the things that I've always done is share with the community, right? Like we have a very big community. This is actually very impressive to see how long this conference has been going. Kudos to the founders and everyone who's contributed, because it takes a village to put something like this together. You all should be very proud, right? Because sharing with the community is how we get stronger, how we get better. And so after I published those patents, I open source a prototype. We called it Agent, right? The AI generation and exploration and test. It's still out there on GitHub right now, sharing the work that we had done back then. And this is before any semblance of ChatGPT, et cetera, right? This is It's very difficult to do without that technology. Now it might be much easier to realize. But agent used to spin up, these 5 bots. Bots would detect the application, start applying testing techniques like boundary value analysis and cross-site scripting and SQL injection. Just start testing, like agents testing software. And all the while, there's a bunch of doubters in the testing community saying, no, only humans can test, right? All that stuff is checking, which is fine. Call it what you want. But to me, this was very cool. And to me, this represented part of our future. And so, fast forward to 2019, I decided to leave Ultimate Software and join a startup company called Test.ai with a buddy of mine, Jason Arbin. And Test.ai was a Gradient Ventures funded startup. So it was funded by Google's AI research arm. And Jason and some of the other folks were former Google employees and Microsoft folks. And it was cool because now I was full-time working and we had a mission to test the world's apps. So this is a bold statement. How can I test all the apps? Everyone is focused on testing one app and we wanted to test all of the apps. And the only way you could test all of the apps is if you do it using AI and machine learning. And you had something very general and very scalable across the board. And so from our mission, I was leading the platform. So I led a team that was a mix of machine learning engineers and software developers, ops people, software testers, to build out this infrastructure we call Carbon that allowed us to use computer vision, object detection, natural language processing to do automated software testing. And we did it at scale in enterprise projects, right? Obviously, since Google was a major investor, we had them also as a customer. We helped Microsoft launch their Game Pass streaming service when it was now coming out, and did some work with Epic Games. So I've also done enterprise scale AI-driven testing. It's not just academia, it's not even just Ultimate Software, separate tool on its own. I've done it at scale for some of the largest companies in the world. And so what I normally like to do is share. And so there's different avenues to share. Now, I couldn't open source our platform. That would be suicide for a startup. So what I did was that I put it all in a book and shared the experiences, right? So I wrote this report for O'Reilly called AI-Driven Testing. So if there's anyone who wrote a book on AI-driven testing, then it was me back then. And it's, again, still there now. It's good that I wrote it down too, because some of the stuff that I said in that book are very relevant today, and I can at least point and say, yeah, you know what? I said it a long time ago, and here we are. And it was very cool stuff. We did a lot of great projects, including some hard stuff. You talk about testing apps and mobile apps, but once you start talking about testing video games using AI or testing videos, streaming applications, these are really, really hard problems. All right. So then flash forward to 2022. And actually, we went through COVID, which was pretty interesting. And then I needed a break from all of the artificial intelligence, to be honest. I wanted to get back to testing because I am a testing nerd. That's what I am. At the end of the day, I love testing because testing is normally the underdog, and I always root for the underdog. Everyone wants to do all the other stuff, and no one wants to do this. But this is actually harder than that. So let me do that. And then I will be employed for the rest of my life. Because no one wants to do it, and it's harder, and it's just common sense. So in 2022, I joined EPAM. This was interesting for me because I thought I had worked for a big company. Ultimate Software was about 5,000 people when I was there. I was joining a large global consulting firm, never having really done consulting, helped lead transformations, but never really done consulting professionally. And here I am joining as a VP, CIO level consultant at a very major firm. And after some time, they were like, hey, ChatGPT hit. And they were like, we know that you came in and you were trying to just focus on consulting and doing testing work, but we need you to help with this AI for quality engineering stuff. And so everyone was trying to mobilize and use AI for productivity. Of course, in testing, there's a lot of different use cases, test case design, test script generation, etc. And it was cool to be a part of that and see that and help to lead that chart forward, helping people navigate through, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainties about AI. How do we use it securely, safely? What about intellectual property? How about upskilling folks? Prompt engineering, right? All of these things that need to happen so that we use AI in a safe way. And of course, the big issue is that typically these tools generate a lot of artifacts that seem correct to the untrained eye, but underneath the hood, they could be hallucinating. So, worked on that. Also helped to lead a lot of the open source tools. So EPAM contributes a lot to the open source community, which is another reason I joined, and I like doing that. So their AI DAO platform, and we built a tool called Alita that turned into a collaboration platform. And of course, I continued on my trek to help with education. So I teamed up with Brightest. We did a certification called the Gen AI Assisted Test Engineer Certification with Artificial Intelligence United. And so I've done a lot. I've helped people tangibly use AI to become more productive and not just get things done faster, but also get them done with higher quality and make sure that you can scale through efficiency. Because all this AI stuff is only useful if you can put it to work and if you can make it into something that's very systematic and quantifiable that you can show real results, right? So I'm not talking from a place. A lot of people talk on AI and haven't lived it, but I have lived it and walked through it. And I'm telling you that it is evolving, and we're moving towards this whole agentic AI realm. Ironically, the same thing that I started talking about back in 2009, where agents are prominent. And we started this at EPAM in the testing practice, but it evolved and spread to the entire organization. And now what was part of the testing practice is becoming a core thread for the entire company. So we built tools, we built platforms, we shipped them, and we help people walk through it. First, you got to crawl before you walk, and then you walk before you run. So our methodology is pretty straightforward. AI run, right? First pilot the AI use cases that you think might be useful and start thinking about ROI. Then start to scale that within your discipline and then within different aspects of the software lifecycle. And then enablement is spread it across the entire organization at scale. So I'm here to say, given my experience and what I've done, and having credentialized myself to you, that there is going to be a takeover. AI is going to take over testing. There's no doubt in my mind. But what I mean by that is not necessarily what most people mean when they say that. So I need you to listen really carefully for the next few minutes. Let me see how I'm doing on time, because I was told that we start late, but we finish early. All right. So we're seeing agents throughout the software lifecycle, from analysis all the way to deployment and maintenance. And I'm here to tell you that this is not a replacement of testers. This is a repositioning. You see, like in the game of chess, like a pawn is very limited in its movement. It's very limited in how it can attack, how it can navigate the board. But there comes a point where the pawn can become the most powerful piece on the board. And you have to start looking at this in that manner. You see, testers that embrace AI and machine learning are not going to be replaced. I guarantee you that they're going to be promoted. And everyone fighting it still, because there's so much resistance still, is probably going to be left behind just because of the pace at which things are moving. Okay. Why would I get rid of someone who's embracing a technology and learning how to use it correctly to really act as a force multiplier, that you can do more with less? The key there is that you have to really know how to use it, and how to use it in a way that it brings real results. If you can do that, then you're good. If all you're doing is kind of poking around and saying what it doesn't do well, that's fine for you. Not good for anyone in a business. And what we've seen so far is that people are going to use it no matter what, it seems. So we need more people who know how to use it correctly. You with me? All right. So back then, I wrote some things in that book about the future of artificial intelligence. I said that there was going to be a takeover. So I didn't give you any new news that I didn't write back in that book. And I said it was going to take over both the core aspects or the core levels of testing, as well as the non-functional aspects, right? The cross-cutting concerns. And that leaves us wondering, well, what will become part of our future as testers? And the future of testing really involves three things. First, there's going to be people who are leveraging AI for testing, right? Those people that I said are not going to be fired or replaced, they're going to be promoted. There's going to be people who learn how to do that well, and they're going to survive in this profession. The other area is that we need people to test the things that the machine can't test, or at least can't test yet, and may never be able to test. And this is what we're going to talk about, this idea of human experiences. And the third bucket is that someone needs to govern and test and make sure that these AI systems that we're depending on are very, very reliable, right? All right, so we talked about the usage of AI for testing. And there's no doubt that you need to make sure that you upskill in that area. But let's say that AI takes over and we are fully autonomous. What will happen then? Well, everything would be tested, but nothing would be experienced. You see, even the most sophisticated artificial intelligence system is built for a human. And humans are the ones that are driving the experience, because they're the ones that are willing to pay money for whatever you are selling, whatever you're building this thing for. All right, so I brought something today. One second, let me see if I have it. Here we go. All right. See, we need to bring back like exploratory testing. So I recently went to South Africa, by the way, which y'all are quite close to. I was in Punta del Este, yesterday, and I literally saw South Africa. Literally, on the map. So I brought my Explorer hat because I thought it was really cool that we have like a discipline that allows us to put on stuff like this on stage, and I always wanted to. My presentation went away, I guess. We didn't have exploratory testing on the presentation. Was it me? Did I press a button here? Hold on. Oh, it's back. It was me. User error. Ironically, this is all we're going to talk about today, but I guess I pressed the button. But human experience testing. So we're going to walk through this because there's a need to make sure that we're testing these things. There's more than just digital touch points. On one side, you've heard about user or product experience testing, which is generally focused on the application, right? Where on the application did something go wrong? Even how did it make me feel at a certain point in the application? But this is not that, right? This is more than that. There's more than digital touch points in our world, because we're talking about the realest world testing you can think about. And in that case, there are digital touch points, there's physical touch points, and there's experiential touch points. And so when I talk about human experience testing, we're talking about a systematic, data-driven approach for evaluating the end-to-end journey of a customer across these different types of touch points. So you're going beyond traditional functional or usability testing to testing how real people, this is the key here, real people, this is why a machine can't do it, because you need a real person to perceive, feel, and respond to these journeys and use their prior experience, the context, and their expectations, their emotions, capturing all of that. And you might wonder, well, why are we doing this? Well, we'll show you, but let's start by just running a quick test cycle, right? So I came here. I flew from Fort Lauderdale, came through Panama City, and then ended up in Montevideo, right? And it was quite interesting because I was not alone. I had my family with me, and if we start to think about our journey and about all of the different touch points, right? There's like the mobile or web check-in, there's the actual staff where I have like a physical human being to talk to if I so care to do so, and check in at the airport. I have to drop off my bag, there's screening processes, security checkpoints, there's a boarding process, there's, an in-flight experience, which includes other humans who are taking care of me. It might include other digital touch points. There's food, which food is something that is both physical and experiential, if you like food like me. And then, it's a night flight. It was a long flight, so you have to go to sleep at some point. So there's all of these factors. And the first thing to note is that these experiential touch points don't always yield a uniform reaction, right? For example, I knew I was coming here. I had a lot to do before, because whenever I take a trip before work, I got a bunch of stuff to do. So I was kind of neutral when I got to the plane, right? Even though I went through like the same process as everyone else, while I had a whole bunch of like very excited, joyful people next to me, right? Nothing more annoying sometimes than people who are really happy when you're not. But they're my family, so, can't do anything about it. And then even after that, starting off and then flying for 12 hours, it's important to understand that not only do you not have a uniform reaction because you might have started at different points with your feelings, but even people who had the same sentiment in the beginning may not have the same sentiment after going through some experience, right? Because I had a 12-year-old who was very cranky and tired, and a 7-year-old that was just ready for the world. Someone who had slept more than others, maybe, I don't know. So, experiences, right? So once we land, though, right, and we're going through this, understand that this whole thing is very, very complex. Like the journey itself is just tagged on to other things, and it's very interconnected, and so you're dealing with a very complex set of testing. And so just think about getting off the plane now. And, Mackenzie, again, was ready for the world, but there's a lot of different touch points, right? There's the signage once we get off, so physical touch points. You need to make sure and see if they were localized properly, right? If I can understand where I need to go. I'm in a country where there's a different language, right? There's other physical touch points that help me be more convenient, right? Getting off and having carts to go get my luggage, getting through customs. There's digital technological integration into that, right? And then, there's the good old get your bag. And this is important, how quickly this comes out or not. And, there might be other needs, right? More basic needs like going to the restroom or getting water. All of this is part of that experience. And even once we're done, we got to get a taxi or maybe rent a car. And there's digital touch points here too. Unfortunately, I don't know if this was by design, but these weren't working very well here in Uruguay. So someone needs to tell them, right? We had like issues that cause stuff to just crash and fail, a team viewer message that came out of nowhere, right? And the other solution was like, let's just not even have it available or on at all, right? But there was one that worked, ironically, right? Which sparked some interest, right? Like, come spend your money going to shows and stuff, right? Red Tickets had it together, which was part of it. So, a lot going on as you go through this experience. You might need help. Something didn't work. You might be lost. What about accessibility, right? Does that experience happen the same way for someone who has some sort of physical or other type of disability, right? Is there food, right? How does that food fit in? And it's important to note that things can change really quickly just as you walk through these experiences. So I had one cranky and one excited, and then all of a sudden, everyone seemed to be happy, right? And so when I talk about human experience testing, I want you to think about this type of journey, right? The journey that also involves these touch points and being able to quantify those. So maybe pre-departure, you had a good experience checking in with the mobile app and going through the screening process. But then you hit unnecessarily, which is disappointing, after a clean mobile check-in. Now you got to wait in a line to drop your bag. Well, that sounds like ridiculous, right? And you might get a little bit disappointed at that long wait, right? Or maybe the group numbers are all scattered over the place, and it's like, well, what's the point of having signs if they're all going to be disorganized? I mean, this is Miami, Fort Lauderdale, okay? Like, let's remember that. And so you can slice those things according to those touch points, or you can have a blended score, right? Like I could just think, well, okay, well, my seat was comfortable, I enjoyed the food, I had wireless entertainment, and they timed the nighttime ambiance just right, right? And it's important to understand that even when you split physical and digital, even experiential touch points can have its own life, right? Something like eventually getting here, even after the bad technology, getting here and getting into the cab and having that cab driver feel like, man, he's giving us a tour of Montevideo in that moment. And we're seeing stuff, and like, obviously it's going to take us a while to get back from that frustration back to a high, but it can be done, right? But the important thing here is that you can track that whole journey, and if this is your brand, if this is you who are building a product or a service, you might want to know where things are failing along that journey, right? And so understand that this is the important kind of testing, and that each user going through it is telling a different story, and that the context matters. You see, last night we had a speaker dinner. We went to the same restaurant that I went to a few nights ago with my family. The big difference in context there. When I'm there with my family, I'm really looking at the overall experience for us having dinner. However, when I'm at speaker dinner, I'm thinking about other things. Like, no one told me I was going to have to introduce myself in Spanish during the speaker dinner. No one said that. It was quite interesting. But I'm also looking at how this event is being organized, how they're appreciating the speakers, what are they doing, right? So I'm not just looking at the restaurant brand and what is happening there. So context really, really matters when you put this stuff down. And you can make this stuff very real for any brand, right? So the customer journey for something like Pedidos Ya, right? How does it start? It starts from a mainly digital world and then steps into more of a physical and experiential world, right? How does that matter? Does that really impact what is your bottom line? Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is retain customers or grow your customer base. And this actually makes testing very relevant in this day and age, because it ties testing to the bottom line and the top line of your revenue. So human experience testing is important, right? Satisfied customers are the best kind of business criteria, right? This is how we measure success. We make assumptions all the time, and we need to align those assumptions with reality, and we need to do real testing with real people to do so. There's also a lot of cultural and demographic stuff that we can't really test in the lab adequately, and the only way that you gain loyalty is through real users using your product. And how does that actually boil down to it? So lots of different types of ways that you can do this type of testing. You can send people into the field. You can get user feedback. You can have a targeted experience, right? What happens when they're trying to offer the ability to order gas tanks via your app, right? So you can test new offerings. All right. So I want you to remember that there's a big world of exploration, and this is where we're going to start wrapping up. There's a big world of exploration out there for this type of testing. But especially in the age of artificial intelligence, I want you to also remember that all these AI systems that are now easy to build and easy to implement and easy to put out there, remember, even the most complicated one is built for who? A human. And so we also need to apply experience testing like this to artificial intelligence, or what I like to refer to as AI-infused applications. Because a lot of you are out there interacting with AI all the time now, and it's embedded in everything that we're using. And what is the experience like for you? And is that experience the same for someone that looks like me? Or is it different? And so an AI-infused application is one that has artificial intelligence, like some model, as part of its workflow, right? And they're highly dynamic, right? Because AI is very adaptive, which means that we can't just test them offline once. We have to test them continuously, right? Even into runtime. There's a big human and societal impact here. AI really impacts a lot of people. It's very general purpose software, and these apps are going to be in all these experiences, bless you. And then, last but not least, these systems actually cause a lot of issues and disruptions with other components, right? Because they're very sensitive to change. And the boundaries around the AI and ML component is very sensitive to change. Like data can change the entire behavior, of course, but data could also change the underlying infrastructure. So data changes aren't just simple data changes. Like, oh, X is now 5. No, X is now 5, and we have a whole new algorithm running, right? This is complex stuff. And so to do this, we need a holistic approach to testing AI and machine learning systems that starts at the beginning of development, or even pre-development, right? Design, inception, etc., continues through the process and then ends into the runtime. And the experience side of this is really about having humans test this stuff in the wild as well, and look at fairness, safety, privacy. Make sure that these things work for the humans that are going to use them, right? So that people don't end up getting harmed or walking away. And we've been doing it, right? Again, it should be quantifiable. If you're looking at AI from any particular perspective, make sure whether or not it's malicious intent, whether or not it actually is usable for you, you can quantify everything that you're doing, right? And so on one side, we need to evaluate the responses and give user feedback on AI. And then on the other side, there's some technical exercises because we're building these into our development tools and development processes. So how does that work when we are testing something like a dev assistant, right? Sometime last year, pretty early last year, I made this iceberg and published it on LinkedIn just to show the complexity of testing AI systems, right? And how you can start to think about the different types of tests that need to be run. So remember, what I said to you so far is that testers in the future are going to be doing one or more of three things, right? And to me, it doesn't matter which one. You go whichever path you feel most passionate about. But we definitely need more focus on this area is one thing that I would say. Even if you start to think that we can use AI to automate the testing of AI, which is what people will also tell you, you still need a human baseline to feed the LLM as a judge. How do you know it works for humans? How do you know if something aligns for humans? Well, a human has to tell you that it is aligned to humans. Nothing else can tell you that, right? And so, as you step into the future, I challenge you to start thinking about these three areas as you walk into the workshops, as you interact with people. Think about where you want to sit at the future of testing and start to come up with a plan to do it. A lot of people are stuck. I think the testing community is stuck in a little bit of a cycle with what to do here. But the thing is that the world is moving, and you have to make a choice and move forward. And so, that's my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tariq. We are really happy to have you here. Here is a quick gift. Come here, take a picture with me.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. I'm looking here. All right, cool. Yeah.
¿Alguien tiene una pregunta? Si tienen preguntas, ok, Fede, te alcanzamos micrófono.
There's always one difficult person.
Hello?
Yeah.
There. It's impressive, all your experience. You started very, very early with artificial intelligence, and I really liked the message of to all of us, start learning about it. But is there, what do you think about with the velocity of everything, how it's moving and that, for someone that is starting, that we haven't started in 2008,
Yeah.
how we can approach the whole thing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. So someone who's like, and I've had this before, like being surprised by it, but I've had like, I've been going to like conferences and teaching prompt engineering, and this is someone's first time using like ChatGPT or Gemini, and I'm like, what? I was like, I better not mess this up because this is like your first experience. But what I tell people is, number one, like the beauty of this compared to back when I started is that like you have it at your fingertips. So someone who's just coming on the scene just needs to start. Just pick a model. I don't care. Just go and play around with it, like talk to it. Ask it things that you know and just start from there. Just be generally curious about how it works and start talking to it. Of course, initially, everyone will be very, very impressed, and that's okay. Just don't stop there. But then just kind of look for avenues where you can just continue to like build on what you've learned. And then just also understand, even as you look at like a large language model or generative AI in the context of, ChatGPT or whatever, that this is not the entire world of AI. For some of those people, that becomes like their whole world. Like AI is that. And I have to pull people back a lot and say like, no, there's a broader field here. There's other forms of AI. And just like anything else, walk into it understanding that like what you know versus what you don't know. Because the biggest thing with people who are now starting off and using these tools is that they start to feel like they're an expert in everything now, right? Even though they just started with AI, and now that they can ask ChatGPT a question about like quantum physics, now they think that they're an expert in quantum physics. Like I've been studying testing for a long time. I did a lot of things. You saw my accomplishments. I am not an expert in testing, and I'm definitely not an expert in artificial intelligence, right? Even though people refer to me in this way, I know better, right? And the more that I learn, the more that I realize that I need to learn more. And so this is how I would kind of approach a first-time user.
Thank you.
Great question.
¿Alguna dudita más por ahí? Anímense, si tienen duda en español, traducimos, no hay problema.
There's someone up there. Yeah, great assistant. Thank you, assistant.
Maybe it's like a follow-up question from Fedes, but let's say that we are normally accustomed to having testing without AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and now we say, okay, let's learn ChatGPT, Claude, Cursor, whatever AI tool may be available. Right now, there is like a world of knowledge in AI.
Yes.
Had to shift focus correctly and prioritize which elements of our testing process and our testing workflow are there to like follow a path that is more efficient, let's say.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about this is that like the testing discipline is like the perfect discipline to be able to answer this question on their own. Because like everything in testing that we know that we need to prioritize. Because the one thing that we realize very early when you start the testing career is that you're going to run out of time before you can test all the things. And so whatever you do now better be more important than whatever it is to come, right? So someone who's starting off trying to figure out where should I start, and then test. The other part is that testing is all about risk, right? And so number one, where to start? Well, what is important to you, but is there a risk of doing that and causing damage or harm, right? So typically I tell people, like, think about the things that aren't really that high of a priority for you in terms of, like, let's get this done now because it's the most important thing for the business. No, start on the fringe of something and start to understand how this thing is working. It doesn't mean that it won't be able to help you in the long run with these harder problems, but start in an area where you feel safe and feel comfortable. The other thing is to realize that you want to make sure that no matter what, you're always in compliance, so that you're using the tools and the infrastructure that are actually approved by your organization and using enterprise-ready AI systems, that you're not sending sensitive data over the wire to ChatGPT or someone who can use or misuse that information, right? So approach it very risk-based. Think about the things that might matter to you, but start in an area where you're pretty sure, like, hey, this is something that I think could help me move faster, but it's not mission critical, and I want to start here. And then build on that. I use it for a lot of stuff. Probably stuff I shouldn't use it for, right? But I'm always using it for something that I know really well, and it helps me to make sure that I have breadth of coverage of things, as opposed to me using it like it's the expert on something. Of course, you can use it just like you use Google to search something, but then cross-reference and make sure that you're fact-checking in different ways. And just don't get that false sense of feeling like you're an expert because you can write a prompt. But yeah, I think testers have a big open playing field to play around with this. Thank you.
Bueno, gracias a todos. Ya les voy a robar a Tariq porque tenemos que seguir con la agenda, pero en la tarde va a estar dando un taller, así que va a seguir en la vuelta. Si tienen alguna dudita más o algo durante el coffee, se arriman y le preguntan, ¿sí? Muchas gracias.
Thank you.